Andrew?
Greetings, everybody. If you'd like to take a seat, grab whatever you're going to eat or drink, and please sit down.
Will I be in the way here?
No, I may be in your way.
I didn't even. But our meeting is.
You don't have a dog with you.
I know.
I said the same thing.
She's a Shabbos dog. She comes as no joy. She would have come. She would have come. She would have come. Sorry, they'll call you just after if you don't.
To get people to sit down. Yeah.
Cats.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Alan Goldstein. I'm chairperson of the Ad Hoc Strategic Planning Committee, and I want to welcome all of you tonight. Thanks very much for coming. Given that an army travels on its stomach, please feel free to get up and get more food or drink as you see fit. I'm not going to take offense if you stand up in the middle of anything I'm saying. So let's get started. Here's our agenda. I already welcomed you and made reference to the most important thing, the food and the drink. I want to speak to why we're here. The Board of Trustees formed the Ad Hoc Strategic Planning Committee to envision and help plan the future of CBS for the next 3 to 5 years. The committee includes CBS President Eve Kahn, board member Roberta Solomon. Roberta actually wanted to be here, but her husband Robert just had surgery, and so I think Roberta is online but couldn't be here in person. Board members Allison Frost and Michael Shevlin, former treasurer Fred Goldman, Rabbi Niles, executive director Mara, and CBS members Catherine Goldman, Shira Lubliner, Danya Massey, Martha Pascan, and myself. Let's ask the basic question. Why should we try to envision and plan for the future? A wise man once said, it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. Or as legendary investor Warren Buffett observed, someone's sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. The point is, the bright future we all desire for CBS depends upon thoughtful planning and implementation. You all remember the story of Joseph's prophetic vision. Pharaoh had these strange dreams that he couldn't understand. Joseph interpreted the dreams and told Pharaoh that when Pharaoh saw in his dreams 7 fat cows followed by 7 very skinny, scrawny cows, that it meant that there were going to be 7 years of hearty harvests, and then there were going to be 7 lousy harvests. And so Pharaoh should plan for the future, stockpile grain, and be ready for the bad times that were down the road. We don't have Joseph's prophetic vision, but we can make some reasonable assumptions about the future of CBS based on past experience and current circumstances, and thereby better prepare for what lies ahead. In doing so, we can also try to continue what CBS does well and try to improve in situations where CBS could do better. The process of our committee includes a number of things. We've had regular meetings during the last several months. We've reviewed financial reports of the temple and organizational documents. We've interviewed interested parties and staff. We've examined virtually all aspects of CBS operations. We've done research about temples and nonprofit organizations. We've analyzed CBS member responses to a questionnaire that we circulated in August. And we're in the process of preparing a report and strategic plan for the board. Subject to board approval, implementation of the plan's strategic goals would begin sometime in 2026 and continue as needed. Some main themes emerged from the questionnaire responses and other sources of information we have, and let me walk through those with you. Number one, CBS is the center of our Jewish community, but needs more adult programming, engagement, and opportunities for families with young children to connect with each other. We saw again and again in responses to the questionnaire that people joined CBS and stayed at CBS, not only because they wanted a Jewish place of worship, but also because they wanted Jewish community, Jewish connection. And I think for a lot of us who didn't originate in Napa, but originated in any number of sizable cities across this country, you might, in many other places, find Jewish community without necessarily affiliating with a synagogue. That's a lot more difficult in Napa because as CBS has said, we really are the center of Jewish community life in the Napa Valley. Another theme was respect for tradition, but a desire for reasonable change to lend freshness to our rituals and services and help build a sense of community. A need for a well-conceived approach to development, fundraising, and financial management. That was another major topic. I think as probably everybody here knows, dues do not cover all of the operating costs. And so there's always a question of, all right, how do you bridge the gap between the money you spend and the money you take in the form of dues? And one of the major concerns that people expressed was, how are we going to handle that? And what do we do about that? Oftentimes people mentioned that they had a desire to see enhancements in lay leadership and organization and communication. And that, that's a challenge, I think, for a small congregation like ours. We have a small staff. We're dependent to a large extent on volunteers, not only for executive positions and board positions, but also for just a host of tasks that go along with putting on the various events and programming that CBS offers. I think based upon feedback we've gotten that generally people think that CBS has done a good job at that, but that we could improve. And so one of the things that we're concerned about is finding ways to improve in terms of our leadership, our chains of responsibility and reporting, and how we organize our operations. A number of people mentioned the importance of maintaining Jewish life and tradition by making sure that we have a suitable youth religious education for our kids. And then the last major theme that emerged from the information we collected was that an awful lot of members of CBS have skills that could be put to effective use on behalf of the congregation. Skills in terms of education, nonprofit management, fundraising, development, marketing, and various creative arts. Now, a number of those people are already doing things to help the congregation, so I don't mean to suggest that there aren't significant contributions already being made. But one of the themes that emerged in the work that we've done was a belief that we could do a better job of harnessing, identifying, and utilizing the skills that so many members here have and are willing to offer. Obviously, there's no desire or intention to cause anybody to do something that they're not interested in doing for whatever reason. That, in very broad terms, is sort of an outline of what we've done thus far. And I've necessarily made it brief because our purpose in meeting tonight is to solicit input from members of the congregation. And so really what I'd like to do at this point, frankly, is open up the floor to any and everything that people want to offer in terms of what their concerns are about CBS, what they think we're doing well, what they think we could do better. It really runs the gamut of what you're interested in because, at root, what the committee, which consists of 12 people, is trying to do is envision and plan the future for the entire congregation. And it's not that committee of 12 people who dictate or determine what the congregation does. And so our purpose in sending out the questionnaire and then in scheduling this town hall meeting was to try to make sure that we get input from congregants, because what we're trying to do is enhance CBS, but we don't want to enhance it with just our own vision in mind. We want to enhance it so that the vision we express in the strategic plan that we submit to the board reflects what the members of CBS want. So if there are questions or comments, Mara and Allison have microphones, and if you put your hands up, we'll be glad to come to you. And Ellen Nelson, we'll start with you.
I'm just curious. I don't think we ever saw the results of the survey, and I'd be curious as to what was the list you just came up with, the result of the survey?
Basically, what I presented there were essentially the main themes that came out of the survey responses. There were just under 80 survey responses. I read all of them. Some others on the committee went through them as well. We had some AI tool that gave us some summary information too, although those tools are not perfect. But the themes that I told you about were the themes that you saw on a repeated basis. Of course, you're going to have an occasional comment from someone that didn't fall into those major themes. But I don't think that there was anything that any one of us would say, gee, this is an important point that's being made by more than just one person that somehow escaped our attention and escaped the list that I showed you earlier.
I'd like to applaud the committee's work. The things that you mentioned sound terrific. More of a ladder from joining the congregation to becoming involved and participating and feeling a part of the community. I would like to see a membership goal. We've kind of coasted along at the number of families we've had for the time that I've been here. But it seems now, I've observed, and I'm here a lot of Shabbats, that we're getting more people attending every Onig, every Friday night service. The Jewish community seems to be having a little awakening with what's going on in the world, and we need each other more. So personally, I'd like to see us set some membership goals, and then building bricks and mortar and use of the land can follow that. And also I'd like to re-comment on a goal that Ellen had put up in our future horizon a number of years ago, and that's a preschool. That perhaps we use the building that was donated by Kathleen Conry, but a preschool, not necessarily only for Jewish kids, would help build membership and ensure future. So those are two things that have not been specifically mentioned that I'd like to see added.
Others? Sure. Sure. So CBS is the center of our Jewish community, but needs more adult programming, engagement, and opportunities for families with children to connect with each other. And I would actually, if I were rewriting this, I would add, I would make that young children.
Hold on, Richard. Just for the folks at home that are watching through the stream, we have to use the mic.
So personally, I'd like to see a lot more education. Being an adult, I'd like to see adult education, but I can understand where people who have younger children would rather have some more education devoted to them, or maybe programs when they drop the kid off at Sunday school, they could have something available for the parents instead of just dropping them off and leave.
And I would tell you that, you know, we're looking at this from a couple of different angles. One being that we need more adult programming, and we need to present it in a more comprehensive, curated manner. The second point with regard to the families with young children is that while on the one hand, we certainly want to build community among the congregation as a whole, it's important to recognize too that within a group that's as large as this one, with about 230 or more families, that there are going to be some important subgroups that have particular interests and needs that we need to attend to as well. One of those being young families with children. And the two, of course, are not mutually exclusive. We can do both.
Eve. So I received many people commenting enthusiastic about the children's services, Friday service we had last week. One, we filled this place up. Okay, some of us were quite shocked, and we were hustling to get more own egg on the table. But there were a lot of people who want to see more of that, and not only because of the engagement of the children themselves, but because when you look at the whole congregation, you realize that's the future. And so we need to do more of that. Not to say it happens, every week, every other week, but if we can have on a regular basis, I think the families and the children and the members in large showed up for that. They really wanted to see how that happened, and I really want to compliment Danya, and I want to compliment Gordon. And it was very interesting because Danya said, I'm not going to read this whole list, the kids don't, I'll take them off, and then you can have a regular part of your service. So she was very aware of focusing on the children, keeping them active. So, if it was going to be boring for them, she said, let's go in the training room and then come back. So I just want to let you know, but that's probably one thing I've heard from just about everybody is like, that was fantastic, can we do more?
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of energy. I think anybody who was here Friday night would agree there was a lot of energy in the room. And, as one of our themes points to respect for tradition, but a desire for reasonable change. You've spoken to one aspect of what that change could be, that in certain instances, a service focuses in some way upon families or children, and you generate a different kind of atmosphere and excitement that perhaps sometimes we don't have.
I was going to say, I think we have the opportunity at CBS, being in Napa, to really be the center of Jewish life. The other cities I've lived in, Chicago, Cleveland, San Francisco, St. Louis, if I wanted to hear an interesting Jewish author, an interfaith discussion, something on Israel, I didn't have to go to the temple. There was a JCC or two. There was a Jewish library. There were so many places you could go and find community and Jewish education. Here, we have the opportunity to really be the center, and I do think programming is the answer. I'm interested in adult programming because I'm an adult and my kids are grown, but I understand the need for it all, and I do think it ties into membership. I have communicated since 2 high holidays ago, not the one we just did, but the one before, with people who attended high holidays. I continue to reach out to them. Some have joined, most have not, because you can just come to the high holidays and pay $250 or whatever it is for a ticket. They need more. I need more ammunition to get them. I need to say we have a Monday night, speaker series. We have once a quarter, we have a creative Shabbat service. Once a week, we have a interfaith dialogue. Twice a month, I need more there. And we have the opportunity as the only thing in town to do that. And I really think that will spark membership. I'd rather get the programming on the table and then go after the members than do it a different way and really have some kind of substance there. I think there'd be a lot of people to get behind that kind of thing.
And I would tell you that what you're talking about in terms of increasing programming and demonstrating to the community that this is the center of Jewish life in Napa, and frankly, with regard to some events, probably attracting people who aren't Jewish, but learn about our events and want to come to them. That the plan we will be submitting to the board will speak to that issue, because again, going back to one of the major themes that people referred to was they wanted to see more programming. Richard said more adult education. Any number of things that would engage adults is certainly something that we will be speaking to. And frankly, in terms of how many of the initiatives that we'll propose that we can effectively accomplish, a lot of it has to do, in fact, probably it has to do more than anything else, subject to board approval, with how many capable people we can get to volunteer their time to help us. Because, again, we've got a full-time staff of Mara and Niles, and we've got Gordon part-time. And at this point, that's the extent of our staff. And, they work very hard and do a very good job for us. But, their numbers are small. And so we're dependent upon volunteers. What we'll try to do is motivate people to want to get even more involved than they are already, because obviously a lot of the people sitting in this room have done many things to help this congregation. If we're going to do, more of the kinds of things that Richard mentioned and Nancy mentioned and that we saw in the questionnaire response, we've got to motivate more people to step forward and help us, and we've got to organize them in an effective way, because part of it is coming up with ideas that are appealing to the congregation, and then part of it is putting the right people in the right positions to help you achieve those ideas, turn them into something tangible. So
I was wondering if there would be enough interest, say, in the family service that perhaps we would select a Friday night each month. Because I think when things happen regularly and people get them on a calendar, we can perhaps develop a better momentum in terms of attendance.
So I can tell you that we will be proposing as a pilot program an alternative form of Shabbat service at least once a quarter. When you mention once a month, could we do it once a month? I think the question comes down to, do you have the people who can devote the time to put the thing together. Because when you step outside our traditional service and decide to do something different, which, you know, I applaud the idea. The question is, okay, but who's going to put it together, and who's going to execute it? And that, you know, that becomes the issue, because it's not as if, obviously, we've got a staff of rabbis and a staff of, you know, of employees whose jobs are to execute whatever new idea we come up with.
Oh my goodness, Cher has something to say. Yes.
To answer that question, the Education Committee took up that exact same question at our meeting on Sunday. And what we have sent to the board is a proposal that the first Friday night of each month be Family Shabbat, with an alternative, you know, hopefully innovative and fun format. And with the board's approval, the first Friday night of each month, probably starting in February, because January the kids are still away on winter break. Starting in February, we'd like to work with Gordon and get this launched, because we agree it was a great success, and the Education Committee is really dedicated to seeing that happen.
I'm not surprised it was a success. And regarding your point number last, I cannot see a number. The last regarding volunteers. Several months ago, when I realized that the rabbi is going on sabbatical, I got together with Howard, the chair of the ritual committee, and I told him the same thing. Hey, my friend, I believe there is enough talent in this shul to put together services on Friday, high quality. Last Friday was an example. It's not that my daughter is the only genius in town. It's not that Alan is one of the best drasha makers ever, okay? But he was there also. But it was all volunteers. It was all volunteers, and it can be done in other areas as well. It took the rabbi, Howard, and myself a meeting of about maybe an hour and a half, to come up with the names of people we figured can fill in the holes. 3 holes every Friday. Music, drasha, service. That's it. We found the talent and we implemented it. That's why through the rabbi's sabbatical, every Friday is covered. And we can continue to do so in the future as well. So we will take care of it, and if Friday night kids service is every first Friday of the month, man, life is easy. Life is easy. We have the talent here, guys. We have the talent amongst you. There is a talent. We found people that can do music. We found people, when Gordon is out, okay? We found people that can do drashot. And we found people that can lead the services. And we did it. So it's being done as we speak, number 1. Number 2, regarding long term. I belong to another shul still in Contra Costa. I was very, very much involved in this shul for many, many years, 40 years in Lafayette. And did fundraising, and did programming, and did adult education, all kind of stuff. But that's not what I'm saying. They were always problems with money. Money. But they did something smart about it. They went to several people in the congregation that were elderly. I'm elderly too, guys. And they got a couple of people to leave incredible amount of money to the congregation upon their departure. And that's why they are swimming in cash right now. It's not the money that is being spent. You don't touch the money given. The principle remains the same. You only touch the money this principle brings in. And it's an incredible supplement in income, because even if we do get more members, which I hope we do, you heard what was just said a few minutes ago. Membership does not cover expenses. You bring another 50 members, still will not cover the expenses. So the key is to find other sources of income. And for this, you need special people, especially people that have been around for a long time, and thank God are wealthy enough to be examples, and get them together as a subcommittee and start sitting on the phones and start calling people, meeting people, and trying to make sure that when they write their will, they also leave some shtick for the congregation.
Right. And Effie, certainly one of the strategic priorities of the committee is to develop better means of financing the gap between what we spend, which we think is a reasonable amount, and there's not a lot of wiggle room to reduce, to bridge that gap and the amounts that come in from dues. And so, one of our strategic priorities is to create a committee that has people who have experience and knowledge in that area and can conceive and help execute a plan for us. Specifically with regard to, bequests from people who subsequently pass away. Of course, you're right that in some instances that does help finance congregations and other nonprofit organizations, and certainly that would be something that would be part of this development plan. Obviously, in the meantime, we can't just I'm not being sarcastic, but we can't just sit around waiting for these people to die, so that we can cash in on their bequest. In the meantime, we have to figure out through effective means of development how we're going to fund what we need to do and what we want to do. Some of the ideas that people have raised that are very good ideas. If we put them into concrete terms, there may be people in the community who are willing to fund something that they're told about that is a specific initiative that has an appeal to them, because it's not simply someone saying, would you give me $100 or $500 or $10,000? It's someone saying to them, we've got a program, and this is what the program is, and here's why I think it would be of interest to you. And that may be more engaging. But, that too is part of a more professional approach and organized approach to how you're going to fund the, operations of this temple.
I've been wondering if there was any way we could interface more with the Napa community outside of our own little circle, especially in this time of so much anger and misunderstanding about what Jews believe and are, and there's just a lot of superstition out there. I'm not sure what form it would take, but I know in the past when we've opened our doors, quite a few people have come in from the outside. I think more of that would be healthy for us.
I think you're absolutely right. I would tell you, I didn't see that kind of comment mentioned a lot in the questionnaire responses, but at the same time, I think what you say is basically fundamental to, our Jewish tradition. I mean, you look up on the stained glass windows, and it tells us to perform tikkun olam, to repair the world, and that's part of our obligation. And Rabbi Niles, from time to time, and properly so, speaks to that obligation in his sermons and Devar Torahs and other comments from the Bima. That is one of the things that I think we can do better at, that we can help repair the world through community engagement. And by doing so, not only will we perform tikkun olam, but we'll also, frankly, improve our own situation in what is largely a non-Jewish world and a non-Jewish community. And you're absolutely right that we need partners. We need community partners. Rabbi Niles has a nice relationship with the police department, which works to our benefit. Certainly there are other initiatives that we could pursue and that our report will speak to about reaching beyond ourselves to try to help others, and in doing so, frankly, and this is self-interested, but practical, especially in these times, to help ourselves as well by building bridges to other people.
I think the easiest way, is this on? Okay, the easiest way is to identify the benefactors and go after the benefactors to find out what their interests are. And you can program interests that they are interested in already, and that will help them fund programs as opposed to finding programs and looking for benefactors.
Many of you might not know, but of the 5 people on the Napa City Council, 2 are members of our synagogue. We should be very proud of that. And they don't hold any meetings on high holidays any longer because we have 2 Jewish people. And they also belong to Banjo, which is the Bay Area Jewish elected coalition. And they represent our synagogue on that as well. And I just think that's an important thing that gets thrown into the mix. And yes, I absolutely always believe that we should open the doors up more and more and more. And we're working on some things for this year. But as you come up with ideas, we need everybody to bring ideas. It's just not one person who can come up with all the ideas. I'm just sitting here, Mark and I are kind of laughing. Some of the stuff, it's great to hear newer members come up with things we've been talking about for 20 years, and we haven't solved them yet. So obviously there's still a lot of work to be done, and I give kudos to this ad hoc committee for the good work that they've done, so thank you.
Ellen, what you speak to is a good point, because in the work of the committee and things that we've talked about, various initiatives that we think would be helpful, oftentimes some aspect of what we're talking about has been tried before, or has happened on some kind of perhaps impromptu or not continuous basis in the past. And some of those things that didn't continue, it's not necessarily a reflection of there being a bad idea. Actually, some of them are good ideas. I think, again, it takes you back to the fundamental reality that in order to get things done that are helpful, we've got to have capable people who devote their time. And again, we've got a lot of people who already do that, and a lot of them are sitting in this room. But in order to do some of the things we'd like to do, we're going to need more people. And just by way of example, for purposes of adult programming, that shouldn't be 1, 2, or 3 people. That needs to be a larger group of capable people, so that we're taking into consideration different points of view, and so that we're reflecting, I think, one of the basic values that you have in an organization like this, or congregation, and that is that you've got to satisfy the congregation at large, and not just some small constituency. So we really want to have more people involved in programming and in other areas, because we think it'll be to our benefit.
I'd like to suggest that we address a hole, I think, that we have between Nancy's efforts and then when people join. Jonathan and I were talking in the kitchen this evening. He's decided to get involved by being in the kitchen and helping out. There needs to be a way, when somebody decides to join, they've already made the first big step. Threshold anxiety has been overcome. But we need a step that takes them from when they join, maybe they hook up with somebody, adopts them, a way to get them into using their talents and being more involved?
Well, you know, the point you just made, which is a very good one, and I'll give you a couple of means to follow up. You know, frankly, I can tell you that that Nancy would, you know, scrutinize the lists of new members and tell me who these people were and who these people are, and you know, would go on the internet and do some research about who they are, which of course, you know, the information's readily available. You Google somebody's name or you look on LinkedIn, and oftentimes people she was identifying are people, you know, who can be of great help to us in any number of areas, including development. You know, one way to follow up with new members, and this is just one idea that in a very small way we'll refer to in the strategic plan as a possible idea, you know, would be an event called The Place at the Table, where we would have veteran CBS members host small dinner parties at their homes. And depending upon, you know, people's capacity and how much money and effort they were able to put into it, you know, we're talking about they might have a dinner party of 6 or 8 people. And the idea principally would be to connect with new members, put new members together with veteran members. One, so that you actually have some engagement, so that somebody who's joined the congregation, you know, feels as if the congregation actually cares about me. They invited me to dinner. And I'm meeting people who actually seem to be interested in me. They've invited me to their house for dinner. You know, and it could also be an opportunity whereby we could have, you know, Niles, Gordon, Mara, sort of hopscotch to a few different dinner parties where, you know, they'd make an appearance and be able to sort of meet up close and personal these new members. And it also would give, you know, more veteran members of the congregation, you know, a lot of the people who are sitting here, a lot of the people who are doing the work of the congregation right now, an opportunity to identify, you know, somebody new who has a skill, whether it's finance or marketing or, you know, some creative arts programming that could be of benefit to us. So, you know, I think your point is very well taken, that we need to do more than just get the person in the door and then forget about them. You know, we need to try to build some bridges so that they don't just join the congregation, they actually become part of this community. Because frankly, we don't create a community simply because we all belong to the same congregation. We've got to have some shared experience. We've got to have some common values. And I think to a large extent, you develop those by interacting, you know, and what better way to do it than over food?
Alan, I wanted to ask what the form of the report will be to the board, and so the group here has some idea of what that may look like. Because you've identified these main areas that you're going to cover, but are you going to be providing specific proposals to the board and then steps that the board needs to take? Are you going to include like a first-year priority or third, you know, 3-year projects, 5-year projects, that sort of thing? So this group has some concept of what's going to be going forward.
Sure. So it'll be a narrative report, a lengthy report that explains at the outset what we're doing and why, that identifies several strategic goals and explains why those goals should be pursued. And you know, as you might imagine, some of them require more discussion than others. I mean, finance and development is certainly one that takes a significant amount of discussion. Programming is another. The conclusion really is that this report, this strategic plan, subject to the board's approval, is the starting point. Because after the plan is approved by the board, if the board approves it, then the question becomes, okay, implement it. And you know, I'm reminded. I'm from St. Louis. That's where I grew up, and downtown St. Louis has all sorts of problems and has for many, many years. There has been one downtown plan after another, and those downtown plans sit on a shelf and gather dust, even though many of them had good ideas. So, you know, my basic point is there has to be follow through. And to your question, most of the implementation would follow after the plan. That would be the next step. There's certainly specifics that the plan will lay out in terms of the strategic goals, why they're important, how they can be conducted, some of the people who would be important to trying to pursue those goals. And then, subject to approval by the board, the next step's going to be, okay, now we have to pursue implementation. And that's the real hard work.
I really like the idea of the family services. I think that. Is it on? I really like the idea of the family services. We used to have those many years ago. And I think it's really important to get our younger families involved. And I think they do show up when it involves their children. The other thing that I really like is we used to have, I think it used to be actually once a month, a new members Shabbat as well, where prior to services, we would just put out cheese, you know, and crackers and encourage the new families that Nancy obviously would know who has joined, and invite them and anyone else who feels they're a, quote, new family to come and meet other people. And I think it needs to be proposed that way, that they can come and get involved to just meet people. If they don't want to work, at least they can meet other Jewish members of the congregation, which in turn may bring on some kind of feeling that they want to actually get involved.
One, 2 points. One thing that was very successful for the membership committee when I was a chair before Nancy were ambassadors. Every new member was assigned an ambassador derived from similar interests, similar age, similar personalities, whatever. And Allison's here, I know. It was a very successful program. We didn't have trouble getting people to volunteer to be ambassadors, and new members loved it. When they came to the synagogue for Friday night services, they didn't have to worry about who they sat with. Their ambassador was meeting them, etc. The other thing that we haven't talked about at all, and I think it has huge significance in planning forward, is leadership development. I know that we have had trouble coming up with someone that would agree to be VP of the executive committee of the board. But I remember back, and I probably have it somewhere. I don't know if you were here then, but Lauren did a big session during or before a board function. We laid out, the work doesn't have to be redone. It was already done to initiate something so that we don't have to say, okay, what's the name of the committee that picks future members? Sorry. Yeah, so the nominating committee doesn't have to sift through everybody. We're creating people who would like to learn more about leadership.
Succession planning.
Yeah, succession plan. I mean, I think probably, Eve, you can say it was a challenge to come up to lead a board that had minimum experience of being a board member, so that people that are going to be nominated for the board have some idea of what is expected of them, how much time is expected of them, etc.
And Judith, I think a couple of things that help speak to the point you made. And one is, and we've touched on this earlier, and that is that we can try to engage new members and younger members more effectively so that, we demonstrate to people that this is a community and that there's value to their being a significant part of the community, so that some of those people who are capable decide, this is my community, it's important to me, and at some point they're willing to lead in some capacity. The other thing that speaks to the concern you raised is that, and we'll touch upon this in the plan, and that is that we belong to the Union of Reformed Judaism. They have programs. They have programs to help train for board. They have programs to help with finance and development. We pay dues to that organization. We should take advantage, and frankly, we should for prospective or new board members, we should have our own workshops too, because obviously, every temple or synagogue is a little bit different, and there's certain nuances, and we should take advantage of the experience and knowledge that past presidents, past board members, and current executives and board members have, and have that imparted to new people so that they come in knowing full well what their responsibilities are, and have the benefit of guidance and experience.
I'm sorry. Oh, I don't think we have to always reinvent the wheel. I think there are some very strong historical notes and memorandums, etc., to review and use again rather than recreate.
Okay, I'll speak. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you. Okay. I'm Miriam. We're relatively new members. We came from actually just here in Berkeley. And I wanted to say something about, related to the Friday night Shabbatot. And that is that we're talking about CBS as being the center of Jewish life in the Valley. And many of us here, the synagogue is affiliated with the Reform movement. Many of us come from Masorti conservative or even Orthodox backgrounds. And I consider this really a community synagogue because there is no other. And so we're here. And I've learned a lot here. I've enjoyed exploring the Siddur and also on the holidays. It's fascinating and it's wonderful. But one thing that I find missing, and I think other people may feel the same way, is the fact that we don't have Shabbat morning services except if there's a bar mitzvah. And I find that missing. I find it missing for kids who have a bar mitzvah and have never just been at a regular old Saturday morning service, which has its own feel to it. It's different than the Friday night. That's exactly 1 hour. Everybody comes in and out and has the oneg. And frankly, I miss the family Shabbat dinners because the more I come on Friday night here, the less we have the dinners. But I'm thinking that it would be nice, maybe again, using this once a month model or something like that, to have a Saturday morning service, which is similar to when we have Rosh Hashanah services in the morning. It's a little bit longer, more opportunities for participation, other melodies. It's a different thing. And I think it would be useful if we could add that into the repertoire, I think, just to vary it and to have a place for people that actually are missing those services.
Thank you, Alan. First of all, I'd like to second that comment. I don't know your name, I'm sorry. Miriam just made. But what I'd like to address for a moment is something that I think is missing and should be really addressed to. I just don't know exactly who should address this. When we had little children, all of our friends we met through a local chavra, through the little kids basically. And it seems to me that the best people who know how to get this started and to influence parents to start a chavra would be, believe it or not, the teachers here, because they know whose child plays with that child and they like each other, whatever. And then to open up, to try to get them to do off-site chavras. It's great for socializing with the kids. The parents get to know the other parents. Ideally, they may have friends that are Jewish that aren't temple members. They could invite into the chavra, and it serves as a feeder because those parents have purchase. I think that's the right way to use that term. They have purchase. They have a reason to want to do this because it's for their child. Gives their child a playmate opportunity. It gives the parents an opportunity to get together with other like-minded parents with children of similar ages. Forming it is huge. I mean, my children are 42 and 44 now, and we are still friends with many of the members of our chavra when our kids were like 6 and 4. So yeah, I would love to see something like that happen here. The question is, how do we get that started? Mara has an awful lot on her plate to begin with. She's not the right person. There should be someone either on the board to help organize this, someone somewhere along the line to talk and try to get a very small committee, 2-3 people together to try to figure out the mechanism where you could convince parents, your child will appreciate this, you will gain this, you will have activities as family members. Thank you.
So, to your point, Michael, the reason we listed among the main themes more programming and engagement, not only for adult members but also for families with children, is specifically for the reason you pointed to, and my expectation would be that the programming committee that the plan would propose to create would in part be looking to the question of, okay, how do we create something, whether it's a chavra or something else, that engages families with young children, that speaks to their needs, which obviously in certain respects are going to be different from the needs of most of us who are sitting here tonight.
Participate in the chavra are not members of the synagogue, it entices them. It acts as a feeder program.
Mm-hmm.
And that feeder program works just not for 4 and 5-year-olds, but all the way through the B'nai Mitzvah years.
We're going to go Susie, then Deborah, then Nancy.
So we've been talking about how to cultivate new members and how to try to bring out their strengths and utilize them and help them feel involved. It's great. We've got to get members first. And everybody who's a visitor is a potential member. Now, we're a friendly bunch because this is the first woman who spoke to me in this room about 11 years ago, something like that. We're a really friendly bunch, but we don't acknowledge the visitors, especially. I mean, there was a couple who sat next to Judy that I met in the lobby this last Friday, and they were lovely. I don't remember their name. I know where they moved from. We didn't get any kind of contact information for them. We didn't get a visitor sticker for them to wear. They weren't acknowledged during service. And so I think that trying to cultivate and acknowledge and ask if these people would like to be contacted by a member of the congregation or somebody from the membership committee via a card or something like that. I think that would be very helpful. My former shul greeting and acknowledging visitors was a big deal there. It was a major deal. They had one person every week, and that was all they did. is that they got names, phone numbers, stickers, hello, you're sitting with this person, that kind of thing. So I think that might help a little bit.
Right. I mean, I think that's a good idea, and I agree with you that we ought to acknowledge visitors, and we ought to recognize that they are potential members. But keep in mind, you've got one executive director who has no assistant, and when I say this, I'm not being critical. I'm just pointing to a reality, and. Oh no! I'm not suggesting that the idea is not a good one and that we can't carry it out. My point is that in order to carry it out, we need help from volunteers.
But Alan, there's a board member in the lobby every week, or should be, and that very easily could be the person, and they can do more than just hand out CDURs, so.
Ask the visitors to fill out a name tag, the sticky kind. And we also had a book, a sign-in book. So nobody had to do anything except ask them. Then membership followed up on it. No, I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying it's easy to go back.
Deborah.
I think none of this is addressing the larger existential issue of apathy. How many people are here and how many are members of the congregation? And I speak from someone who served multiple terms on the board. I chaired our major fundraiser 4 times. I was on the board multiple terms. I chaired our major fundraiser 4 times. I have been a large financial contributor, but I feel like sometimes, most of the time, I was banging my head against the wall because there were no expectations. Board members didn't show up to our major fundraisers. We couldn't even get the entire board or even a majority of the board to come to these fundraisers. So, okay. Of course.
The people at home can't hear you.
Okay, and I would also say that I know other synagogues. Now, Beth Abraham is a conservative synagogue in Oakland. They have 1,000 families. People fight to be on the board because they see it as good on their resume. So we have an older demographic, so that changes the parameters. And I don't know what the answer is because I just became so frustrated. I kind of left in a huff. I said, the same people can't be doing the same thing every time and expect things to happen. I mean, where is everybody else if you want these results?
We've talked a lot tonight about how to connect because of our Jewish tradition and our Jewish religion. I just wanted to share some thoughts of just in the past year, how we can connect people because we're members, but it has nothing to do with Judaism. Just in the past year, I've become part of a poker group on a monthly basis of members of the congregation. It has become a very strong group of people. We love getting together once a month. I also was identified as a sports addict, and now I'm part of a group that meets at Pete's once a month, and we don't talk a lot about what goes on at the synagogue. We talk about sports. So if there are ways to connect people for reasons other than just being Jewish, I think that would be an important part of making our brotherhood stronger and sisterhood.
I think one of the problems that we face right now, how this works. This way? Okay. I don't know. I think one of the issues that we're facing, the perfect example tonight is, I think there's about 10 teenagers in the other room that were here for youth group, and not a single one of their parents, maybe except for Danya, is here. They dropped their kids off, they all left, and they're going to come back at 8:30 or whatever to pick them up. That's what we're facing. The younger families really don't get involved unless there's something for them that they actually want to do. And I think this is the biggest crisis that we face, is figuring out a way to get them to feel like they want to be involved. Because I just don't see it. I go to a lot of stuff. Look at this room. Who's here? It should have been them. They should be here explaining what they would like to see and what they want to do, and they're not. And I think if for this synagogue to survive, that's the biggest crisis that you face. Not the people in this room, not these people because they all contribute. These people all care, and they do stuff. And I don't know what the answer is, but, huh? There's kids here, but then the younger ones, the parents aren't here is what I'm saying.
Okay. I have a mantra that everybody has heard me say on the Strategic Planning Committee, and also anybody who I've talked to on the board, and that is the word transparency. And I think one of the problems we have is I hear the word confidentiality a lot thrown around about various conversations and things that are going on, which to me translates to secrecy, that decisions are being made behind closed doors, that the congregation has no input regarding. And I want to suggest very strongly, and I have in the Strategic Planning Committee, that we need to be transparent about what we're talking about, what we're planning, and what we're going to do. And just to give you an example right now, apparently there's a nominating committee. I heard sort of, that being mentioned. I would like to see a nominating committee open it up to the congregation and say, who do you think should be on the board? Do you want to be on the board? Do you know somebody who has leadership potential that wants to be on the board? Rather than going about this, with no input from the congregation. And then we end up with a board that doesn't want to do anything or doesn't want to come to events and so forth. So let's start from the position of we need to be much more open about this process. There's a lot of leadership potential in the congregation that simply isn't being tapped. So I would like the mantra to be transparency.
Robin. So that leads to a discussion or a suggestion that once the strategic plan is passed by the board, we need to notify the whole congregation of, not just drop it at that point. We need to notify the whole congregation of the process and what the strategic plan is, and let's ask for input. Scott had a comment too.
Also, Robin works, does a lot in the kitchen for different events. And one thing that she has talked to me about is she goes out and she asks people to help her in the kitchen. She doesn't wait till people volunteer to help in these events. That's how she gets people to work along with her, is not by waiting for them to volunteer, raise their hand, go out and ask them to come in and help.
That was exactly what my point is. I've been president of the Native Plant Society here for 15 years, and I'm now backing out. But I needed a treasurer, and I couldn't think who's going to volunteer to be the treasurer. Finally, I asked someone, would you be the treasurer? And she has been fantastic. So that's what you have to do. You can't wait for someone to step up. You've got to go out and ask someone, will you do this? And if they say, no, I don't have the time, well, can you do this piece of it? And I think that's the way you'll get your volunteers, because every organization I know has the problem. How are we going to find another board member? How are we going to find someone to do X, Y, or Z? And that's how you find it. And I learned that very late in life.
To take up on what Shira was talking about, I belong to a bicycle club. We pay $35 a year, but they have monthly meetings. Before every meeting, every member gets an agenda, and after every meeting, they get a summary of what was discussed. We don't get any of that. Yes.
We were talking about adult education and adult activities. Amy's sitting here very quietly. She's been putting together a lot of programs, and I think I would like to see better communication, not necessarily, I mean, maybe more within our group, but get some contacts so that we can, not everybody reads newspapers anymore, but if we can get that information out to the community. These are very interesting, people who have. I think the last one was where the Jordanians and the Palestinians were working to improve the river. So, she's working to find these. But you come here and there's a very small group. So I think we need to, be much more proactive, as well as our own community, but get it out, because there's a lot of people who would probably come and listen to that. So I just want to let you know, because we've been talking about a lot of adult programming, and she's really working hard to try to find activities and interests to do that.
Richard, just to let you know, you're welcome at the board meeting at any time. Just call Eve.
Yeah. Right. And I just want to respond to what Eve said. And this isn't to take anything away from Amy, but Amy is not a single-handed committee for adult programming. We need to have a committee, a broad-based committee representing the congregation as a whole, with lots of people, because when you have lots of people on a committee, lots of people bring their friends. And then you have lots of new ideas, lots of new programs. One person can't do it, right. Or one person plus the rabbi and Mara can't do it. You need to have a committee, and I've suggested, and I believe that this is the proper way it should be done, is that the Adult Education Committee should be a subgroup within the Education Committee for the congregation. And it's not that I want more work by any means. Amy's welcome to be the head of that committee, but I think it needs to be a much bigger, broader committee that will program for a lot of different needs and interests. And in advance and well publicized. But most important, if you have a committee of 10 or 12 people and you plan an event and each of them brings some friends, Suddenly you've got a constituency for your programs. One person can't do that. And that's my major point is it cannot come out of just a single person.
Right, and the strategic plan will speak to that. The other thing I'd mention, there are an awful lot of very good ideas that people are mentioning, and some of the things that people are mentioning are really sort of operational details. And I would suggest to, frankly, any and all of you who have expressed an idea about how a particular detail about how this place is run should change. You've got elected representatives. You've got a president. You've got a board. You've got a treasurer. It's certainly your prerogative to go to those people. And just as we would go to our elected officials, our congressmen or our state senators and the like, and say, I really wish you'd do this. I think this is a problem. And pursue it and see if you can get something changed. Because that's not a reflection on the quality of the ideas that people are saying. My point is simply that not everything we've talked about would fall within the realm of strategic goals. A lot of them are details, and they're worthwhile details, and, pursue them.
I have a writing comment from someone watching the live stream. They wanted to mention that childcare was not offered for tonight's meeting, and young families need to put kids to bed around 8 p.m. But they do agree that interests besides Judaism will bring people together.
So I know we're going to be winding down shortly, and I thought perhaps it would be helpful, since I'm on the committee and I understand the phasing of this, it would be helpful for you to kind of give people an overview of the plans going to the board will approve, and then all of these subcommittees and details would be looked at and then formed, and all the ideas then would be harvested. So perhaps you could talk to that so it gives people a sense of context.
Sure. The report will be presented to the board no later than January. And subject to the board's approval, the next step would be implementation. We will be recommending a number of strategic goals. Some of them will happen more quickly than others. Some will take months or even years. The key, frankly, at that point, if the board thinks that the plan is a good one, is going to be implementation. And so one of the things that we'll recommend to the board is to put somebody in charge of implementation. You can colloquially call it an implementation czar, for lack of another title. Obviously, that's not what the formal title would be. But my point is simply that we'll need somebody to quarterback that effort, to take the lead on it. And then they're going to need the help of an awful lot of people, because part of the plan will propose some new committees or reorganization of certain committees that we already have, and getting the number of people involved that we need to help us pursue the strategic goals that we consider important, including things such as better governance, because people have spoken to that, more programming for adults that has Jewish content and that doesn't have Jewish content, that is just for fun. More programming that engages families with young children, because they're an important constituency, and frankly, they're the future of the temple, as a number of people have pointed out. And certainly, one of the most important strategic priorities that we'll speak to is putting together a finance and development committee that can pursue a program to ensure the long-term financial stability of CBS, so that we're not in a situation where in certain years, the treasurer or the board identifies a shortfall and then has to come up with some short-term solution to fix it, such as dipping into reserves. We want to have a long-term plan that properly is referred to as development, that speaks to a number of the things that people here have said about engaging donors, convincing people that CBS is a good value proposition for them when they think about where they're going to make gifts and what they're going to do with their estate plan. And, that dovetails with another priority that we have, which is promoting community. Because if you develop a sense of community and you have a large number of people who think that CBS is awfully important, they're more likely to give generously, and they're more likely to have a proprietary sense, which not only might cause them to give money, but also to say, I want to take the leadership role that some of you mentioned would be important in terms of trying to find new leaders and future leaders, and how do we go about developing that. I think, frankly, many of these strategic priorities are related, and they really do sprout from convincing people, not only existing members, but new members and prospective members, that CBS is an important value proposition, that it's a place where you find Jewish community, where you find connection, where you find spiritual value that you feel good about being part of, and therefore you want to contribute to in whatever way is feasible for you, whether that's volunteering, giving a small amount of money, giving a large amount of money, or in some other fashion. So, Catherine, in response to your question, that's the basic outline, and as I said, it will be in the board's hands in January, and then it'll be up to the board to decide what to do with it, and assuming the board approves it, then we'll move on to implementation. And to the questions or the points that were raised about transparency and openness, I don't think there will be anything in this strategic plan that, if the plan's approved by the board, that would not be something that members of the congregation should see. And I've seen strategic plans from various congregations, and that's only because they became public documents. They were given to their members and made available. And it really is, I think, important that the membership know what the strategic plan is, because after all, the strategic plan is for the members. So,
Kathleen.
Just to be provocative, you were asking for our input. I don't see anybody taking notes.
The whole thing's being recorded.
Okay.
It's all being recorded. I took a couple of notes. A lot of the things that were said tonight that are of value have been said before in the questionnaire responses, and we're aware of them. So, we're attentive to the points that have been made. That doesn't mean that everything that's been said tonight is going to, somehow show up in the strategic plan. Some of the things, as I said, are operational details that wouldn't. Oh, some of the things that have been said are operational details that wouldn't necessarily go into a strategic plan. But the reason we held this event was so that people can have their say. And I would reiterate what I said before, which is, to the extent that you're talking about, details of how this place operates, don't stop with making your comment tonight. Tell Mara, tell the board, tell the rabbi, tell Eve, tell Scott, because you're a member, you're entitled to be heard, and I'm sure they'll listen to you and try to take into consideration what you're concerned about.
Well, concern of mine for a long time is just watching the lack of information on the money flow. And I've always been interested, where's the money, where's it go to? And I really have not really seen a broken out budget. And I always feel sorry that Kathleen gets stuck paying for the Onig every night. And I say, Kathleen, let me get involved. Let some of us others get involved. I know Kathleen's got money. Others in the parish or the community have money. So there are other people. I like to donate to things that I know where the money's going. When I write a blank check for something, I said, well, which black hole is this going into? I like something defined. I've run large budgets, multi-million budgets for profit and non-profit, some of which were supposed to be the other way around, but it happened that way. But I always like to know, though, where I'm sticking my penny and where it's going to end up. So if we could see a monthly budget or a planned budget, or if we're having a special fundraiser, what are we raising funds for? How much do we need? Where does it have to go? I see none of that. So I just sort of, a little bit in the dark on some of that. I'd like to see a little bit more of that being addressed.
Norb.
Yeah, my final comment is I'd like to see the board, when this report comes to the board and they approve it, I'd like to see the board be the one that implements it in the sense that they oversee the implementation. I don't think that can be subcontracted to anybody else. The board has the ultimate authority for making these decisions, and they're elected by the members. And so there may be a czar, so to speak, who could be a liaison, but ultimately the board should take responsibility for this, one, and two, the board should be transparent about what it's doing and how it's implementing this report as it goes along through the various steps. And I think that's going to be very important if this is going to have a chance of being successfully implemented by the board.
Any other comments or questions? If those are all the comments or questions, I went back. We've really talked about final takeaways. Thanks very much for your time and energy and input. And I know Effie has an announcement he'd like to make about a Jewish film. So, Effie, why don't you go ahead?
Here is your opportunity to do a very small thing. There are 10, 20, 30 people here. On the 17th of January, we are showing the movie An Officer and a Spy. Background, quick and to the point. The year is 1894 in France. Alfred Dreyfus is going on trial and found guilty. Totally anti-Semitic event. He never did anything wrong, yet he was tried and sent to jail. And it's unbelievable that only a couple of weeks ago, 130 years later, he received back his rank in the French army. 130 years later. The movie is talking about anti-Semitism like no other movie can show you. And if you want to bring friends, that's the time to do it. Every Jew should see this film. It's incredible. It took me 6 years to get it. Only now we got it. And you can see it on the 17th of January at the Jarvis Conservatory. We will then come back over here to discuss the film and some dinner. 17th of January. Any question, just ask me. My phone is available. You can call me and ask me. But this is an incredible story. The only one caveat about it is that nobody knows. Binyamin Zehev Herzl, the person who foresaw the creation of the State of Israel, was a journalist during the trial in France. 3 years later was the first Zionist conference in Basel, Switzerland, which basically was trying to create a Jewish state because of the Dreyfus case.
It's available
Thanks,
in paperback and hardcover. If I could do one plug real quick. Tomorrow 10 a.m., you're going to get an email in your inbox about the Hanukkah party that's happening on Sunday at 5:30. So if you all want to register for that and come, bring your menorah. We're going to do a big candle lighting in here. We're going to have songs. We're going to have latkes and jelly munchkins and yummy, yummy things. And you can make a menorah too. Ellen? Oh, it looked like a hand raise. Sorry. Judy?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody, and please don't hesitate to get something more to eat or drink in the back before you go.